This was the biggest box office weekend of 2026 so far. And every entertainment outlet is going to lead with the same headline, same movie, same number, same victory lap. Toy Story 5 opened huge. $160 million domestic, $312 million worldwide. Biggest domestic opening of the year. Franchise record. Disney wins. Pixar wins. Woody and Buzz right again. Great. But if that is the version of the story you're going to get everywhere else, this version is just a little bit different. Because this weekend was not just about one movie making a lot of money. This weekend was about what the box office is actually telling Hollywood. And the message is very simple. The audience is not gone. The audience is not dead. The audience is not hiding at home waiting for streaming. The automatic audience is dead. The audience still shows up. They just do not show up blindly anymore. So today we're ranking the 5 biggest box office stories from this weekend, not by how much money they made, but by what the receipts actually mean. So keep your expectations low, your receipts high, and let's get into it. Chris here, the Critical Nerd. Thanks to all the returning viewers. And if you're new here, welcome in. Around here, we keep expectations low, receipts high, and we try very hard not to let Hollywood trade headlines do all of our thinking for us. Because the box office is one of those places where the first headline is usually technically true and still somehow is not the whole story. Yes, Toy Story 5 had a massive weekend. Yes, Disney and Pixar are going to take the victory lap. And yes, every outlet in town is going to tell you this proves audiences still love the movies. Which is true. But the better question is, what kind of movies are they rewarding? Because this weekend was not just one big animated win. It was a scoreboard. It told us what has legs, what does not, what is overperforming, what is coasting on name recognition, and what Hollywood would probably prefer you not to compare side by side. So before we get into the receipts, do the usual YouTube ritual. Smash that like button if you enjoy box office breakdowns without studio PR glitter sprinkled on top. Subscribe if you're new here. Share the video with somebody who still thinks every underperformance can be blamed on people just don't go to the theaters anymore. And drop your biggest winner and biggest loser from the weekend in the comments. Because by the end of this video, I think the answer is going to be a little weirder than the headline. Now let's get into the 5 box office stories from this weekend, ranked by what they actually mean. Coming in at number 5, we've got Scary Movie. 3 weeks ago, this looked like one of the funniest box office comeback stories of the summer. The Wayans brothers came back. Anna Faris came back. Regina Hall came back. The franchise came back from the dead like a parody killer who got stabbed 17 times and still showed up for one more joke. And the opening weekend was big. $55 million domestic. $155 million worldwide. This was the best opening in franchise history. So the headline was obvious. R-rated comedy is back. Parody is back. The audience missed this franchise. Theaters are saved by jokes about horror movies again. Beautiful. Except now we're in weekend 3, and Scary Movie just made $6.7 million. Now to be clear, I'm not calling this a flop. That would be ridiculous. The movie opened too big and the global number is too strong for that. But this is where the receipts get interesting, because a record opening tells you how much interest existed before the people saw the movie. The legs tell you what happened after they saw it. There's the difference. Opening weekend is marketing. Weekend 3 is word of mouth. And right now, the word of mouth on Scary Movie looks less like a cultural takeover and more like a group chat that went quiet after everyone finally watched it. That matters because Hollywood loves to confuse a big opening with a healthy run. They're not the same thing. A big opening means people were curious. A healthy run means people were satisfied. And with Scary Movie, the first weekend said, we remember this. Third weekend says, okay, we remembered it. That is not the same thing. The lesson here is not parody is dead. The lesson is that nostalgia can still get people in the door. But once they're inside, the movie still has to do the work. I know, radical concept. Somebody told the studios that, remember, this is not the third act. At number 4, we've got Backrooms. And this one is still one of the funniest box office stories of the year. Not funny because the movie's a comedy. Funny because somewhere at a major studio, Disney, there is a spreadsheet, a legacy franchise, and a brand awareness study, and a $200 million budget crying over in the corner. Backrooms is based on internet horror. Not a comic book, not a theme park ride, not a 40-year-old toy line, not a Disney Plus show that somebody tried to convince us was actually a theatrical event. Internet horror. A liminal space nightmare born from YouTube, creepypasta culture, and the deeply relatable fear that you might accidentally wander into a beige office maze and never escape. Which, to be fair, is also how most corporate meetings feel. The movie was directed by Kane Parsons, who started this whole thing as a YouTube creator. The reported budget was around $10 million. Yeah, $10 million. In modern Hollywood, that's not a movie budget. That is what some superhero productions spend to digitally remove one mustache, add 2 cameos, and make the sky look like expired grape jelly. And yet, here's Backrooms, still sitting in the top 5 in its 4th weekend. The bigger story is what it represents. This is not just a horror hit. This is internet native storytelling crossing over into theatrical moviegoing. A24 did not need a legacy brand with 30 years of audience conditioning. It needed a clear hook, a strong aesthetic, a young audience that already understood the language, and a movie that felt like an event because the audience made it one. That should terrify Hollywood more than anything inside the actual movie, because for years, studios have acted like the safest thing in the world is familiar IP. And yes, familiar IP can still work. We're going to get to Toy Story 5, but Backrooms proves the other half of the equation. New things can work too if the audience believes they are actually new. Not new chapter, not new era, not new beginning with 12 callbacks and 5 producers desperately pointing at the old logo. Actually new. And that is the receipt Hollywood keeps pretending not to see. Audiences are not allergic to original ideas. They are allergic to expensive reheated leftovers being served like fine dining. At number 3, we have Obsession. 6 weekends in, still top 3, still making real money, still embarrassing movies with marketing budgets larger than its entire production. According to the Associated Press, Obsession added $14.2 million in its 6th weekend, bringing it to $215.8 million domestically and $333.3 million worldwide. And the movie cost less than $1 million to make. Let me say that one more time for you in the back. Less than $1 million. $333 million worldwide. Now, before the accountants start stretching in the comments, no, that is not clean profit. Theaters take a cut, meaning marketing exists, distribution exists. Nobody is saying every dollar of worldwide gross goes into one giant Curry Barker money bathtub. But even after you add all the boring business math, this is still insane. This is not just a hit. This is the kind of performance that makes studio executives stare at their franchise spreadsheets and wonder why they just spent $200 million to make the audience shrug. And the legs, that's the real story. AP says the movie opened to $17 million domestically back in May. Now in weekend 6, it nearly matched that opening number again with $14.2 million. That's not normal. That's not even good hold normal. That is horror movie witchcraft. Most movies open up, drop, stabilize, and then slowly fade away. Obsession is standing in the corner like the creepy kid in a Blumhouse movie, refusing to leave. And the reason this matters is simple. Hollywood keeps acting like the audience needs bigger budgets, bigger universes, bigger stakes, bigger multiverse portals, bigger third act sky beams. But the audience keeps rewarding movies that are smaller, sharper, cheaper, and cleaner. Obsession is not winning because it spent more. It is winning because it needed less. That is the part Hollywood hates. Because if a sub-$1 million horror movie can generate this kind of theatrical energy, then maybe the industry's problem is not that audiences will not show up. Maybe the problem is that the studios keep spending like audience trust is unlimited. And it is not. An obsession is the receipt. And number 2, Steven Spielberg's Disclosure Day. And this is the most complicated story on the board. Because 1 week ago, the headline was easy. Spielberg is back. Original sci-fi is back. Adults are back. The theatrical event movie's back. And honestly, there was a real case for that. Disclosure Day opened to roughly 44 million domestic and about 93 million worldwide. For an original Spielberg sci-fi thriller in 2026, that's not nothing. That is a real opening. That is a movie people showed up for. But now we have weekend 2, and the receipt got less flattering. $17 million domestic, down 61%. Now, as part of that, because Toy Story 5 just vacuumed up the entire family audience like a Pixar branded Roomba? Sure. But Disclosure Day is not really a family movie. Its audience is older. Its audience is more adult. Its audience is supposed to be the kind of crowd that gives a Spielberg movie legs. And that is what makes the drop interesting. Because Spielberg movies are supposed to hold. They're supposed to build. They're supposed to be the movies that your dad tells you are real cinema before falling asleep in the recliner halfway through the third act. But a 61% second weekend drop says the opening was powered more by curiosity and Spielberg's name than by runaway word of mouth. That does not make the movie a disaster. It has already grossed $160 million worldwide in 2 weekends against a reported $115 million production budget. So no, this is not some catastrophic collapse. But it does mean the Spielberg is back headline needs an asterisk. Because the first weekend proved people were interested. The second weekend asked whether they're satisfied. And once again, that is the pattern of this whole weekend. The audience is there. The audience showed up. But the audience is not just rewarding reputation anymore. Not even Spielberg gets automatic legs. And if Spielberg does not get automatic legs, maybe nobody does. That is not bad news for movies. That is bad news for lazy assumptions. And at number 1, well, obviously it's Toy Story 5. This is the headline. This is the giant number. This is the weekend. 160 million domestic, 152 million internationally, 312 million worldwide. Biggest domestic opening of 2026 so far. Biggest opening in Toy Story history. Among animated films, only Incredibles 2 has ever opened bigger domestically. Disney wins. Pixar wins. The toys are back. And every trade outlet is going to run some version of that headline. But here's the version that's more interesting. Toy Story 5 just proved 2 things at the same time. 1, audiences will still show up for trusted IP. And 2, trusted IP can still be creatively exhausted. Both can be true, and in this case, both are the story. The box office number is undeniable. But now look at the critical trend. On Metacritic, the first Toy Story sits at 96. Toy Story 2 sits at 88. Toy Story 3 sits at 92. Toy Story 4 sits at 84. And as of this recording, Toy Story 5 is sitting at 73. Generally favorable, which sounds good because it is good, but this is Toy Story. Generally favorable for Toy Story is like hearing a chef say, the steak was edible. It's not bad, but it's also not why people made the reservation. And this is where the video gets more honest than the victory lap. I'm not saying Toy Story 5 is a bad movie. By most measures, it's not. The audience score is strong. The cinema score is an A. Families clearly showed up. Kids are probably happy. Parents are probably crying into a popcorn bucket because a plastic cowboy looks sad again. The movie works, but the real question is not whether it works. The real question is whether it needed to exist. Because this franchise has ended beautifully before. Toy Story 3 was the ending. Then Toy Story 4 came along and said, actually, here's Woody's ending. And now Toy Story 5 comes along and says, Actually, what if toys fought an iPad? And look, as a parent metaphor, it's not a bad idea. The villain being a tablet is probably the most accurate depiction of modern childhood Pixar has ever done. But there's also something funny about Disney making the villain a screen while simultaneously selling you the toys, the tablet tie-ins, the streaming window, the soundtrack, and probably a limited edition popcorn bucket shaped like a childhood anxiety. The movie is about technology replacing toys. The marketing campaign is about selling you more toys. That is not hypocrisy, that is synergy. And synergy is just hypocrisy with a quarterly earnings call. Then there's the budget. AP reports Toy Story 5 cost $250 million to make before marketing. $250 million for animation. For the fifth movie in a franchise that has already had 2 emotional farewell tours. That is the part nobody wants to say out loud. This movie did not just need to be liked, it needed to be massive. And it was. That is the win. But the creative warning sign is still there. The audience showed up because the trust was still there. But the critical scores suggest the trust account is not infinite. That is the lesson. Toy Story still has enough brand love to open huge. But every time Pixar goes back to the well, the question gets louder. Are they telling another essential story? Or are they protecting one of Disney's safest revenue machines? And again, both can be true. The movie can be good, the audience can love it, the box office can be massive, and the franchise can still be drifting from necessary story to very expensive brand maintenance. That is not hating. That is reading the receipt. $160 million domestic, $312 million worldwide, a 73 Metascore, a $250 million production budget. All of those numbers are true at the same time, and together they tell a more interesting story than Disney is back. They tell you Disney still has brands that audiences trust. But they also tell you trust is now the most valuable thing in Hollywood. More valuable than IP, more valuable than nostalgia. More valuable than trailers, influencers, legacy characters, and executives saying, for the fans, while holding a knife behind their back. The audience is still there. The audience still spends money. The audience still wants theatrical events, but they are not automatic anymore. And that is the part Hollywood does not want to explain. So that's the weekend box office, not the version with one headline and a gif of Woody waving. The version with receipts. Scary Movie proves the record opening does not guarantee legs. Backrooms proves internet native horror can embarrass legacy IP on a fraction of the budget. Obsession proves a micro-budget movie can generate the kind of theatrical energy studios keep trying to manufacture with 9-figure spending. Disclosure Day proves even Spielberg still needs word of mouth. And Toy Story 5 proves trusted IP can still explode, even while showing signs that the creative gas tank is not as full as it used to be. That is the real story. Not that theaters are dead, not that audiences are gone, not that franchise movies are doomed. The real story is that the automatic audience is dead. The audience is still there. They're just making Hollywood earn it again. And honestly, good. Because if a $750 million horror movie, a $10 million internet nightmare, and a fifth Toy Story movie can all succeed in the same marketplace, then the problem is not the audience. The problem is the studios that keep acting like the audience owes them attention. They do not. Attention is earned, trust is earned, and this weekend, the box office made that very clear. If you found this useful, you know what to do. Like the video, subscribe if you're new, share it with somebody who still thinks every underperformance is because people don't go to the theaters anymore, and I'll see you on Wednesday. Keep your expectations low and your receipts high. I'm the Critical Nerd, and I am out.